Hello, JF. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's wonderful to be on your podcast.
I am super excited to have you on the show today. How you feeling?
Terrific.
All right, excellent. So, folks, today we have JF Benoist joining us on the show. And he has been counseling people struggling with addiction, mental health, and relationship issues for over 20 years. He co-founded the Exclusive Hawaii, a non-12-step residential addiction treatment center with his wife Joyce in 2011. He's a creator of the therapeutic methodology Experiential engagement therapy, which focuses on addressing a person's underlying core beliefs. He is well known for his authentic experiential techniques, which maximize long-term change. Sound about right there, JF?
Boy, you said it beautifully.
Did I nail it?
You did.
All right, so folks, we're gonna try and keep this interview tight because there's gonna be so much information. I started reading The Monkey Mind, and it immediately started to I just connected with it, and it's so simple. It's an easy read. It's gonna make lots of sense to you. But what we're talking about today is mindset. There is a lot involved in the mindset, and we're going to make it simple for you. So first of all, because we're going to be talking about mindset, there is morning practices, morning rituals, daily rituals that some of the most successful people in the world practice. What is your normal daily routine, JF?
So one of the things that I became really aware, which I talk a lot about in the book, Addicted to the Monkey Mind, that the real issue, since it is a mindset, what can I do on a daily basis to manage the mindset that I know is most likely going to get triggered during my day? And one of the things that really made the difference for me is to stop thinking in terms of a meditation or a relaxing or any of those trying to create calm in or a regulation skill or any of this. What I really subscribe to is this idea of being in a relationship with my monkey mind. And so what I do is I specifically sit, usually for about 20 minutes when I start my day, the first thing I do when I wake up. And the idea is to be able to breathe in a circular fashion. So I have my belly button extend all the way out, my chest area, and imagine that you're filling up a balloon. And so I fill up this entire area, and as soon as it's empty, I fill it back up. And it's a little bit like if you observe a cat or a dog, their stomach constantly moves back and forth. And so the idea is to breathe in a circular fashion. But then what my focus is on is I want to try to keep it on my breath, but I'm also very, very aware of my monkey mind, meaning every thought that comes through. And I put all of my attention on my breath as I'm witnessing the thought process. And most importantly, what I begin to witness is whether I have the tendency to be infused thinking with it or whether I can just let the thought go. And so I'm noticing that there's a repeated pattern. There's thoughts that will come and they won't want to leave. They'll just repeat themselves. And it could be as simple as, how long is this going to go for? Or
I've been there.
Right? Right? It's like, what am I doing? I got things to do. Why am I sitting here? Yeah? And so that's the monkey mind. That, I tell people, put a timer. I put it for 20 minutes, or even if you do 5 or 10 minutes already, that's a huge improvement. But the idea is to witness whether your thoughts are, if you're hooking onto your thoughts or not, if you have the ability to let them go by like the weather, witnessing, the clouds go by. Just that skill alone, here's what it does for us. I call it, personally, it's like my time, I prepare myself psychologically, and I said, this is not going to feel good, JF. This is like, this 20 minutes of starting your day is not going to feel good. And it's okay, just breathe through it, right? But what it does is it trains me to, when I get triggered, I now immediately go to my breath. That's the key. That's why it's so important.
Okay, so here, that's the added element here, because I've been doing this podcast for 4 years. I've asked this question, over 200 times. And so there is all these different practices, especially when it comes to meditation. But it's interesting here because a lot of it's either do your breathing or observe the thoughts. So what did you find, or what was the thing that you found out, or that was so impactful, and what helps your meditative practice with combining? Because like you said, the thoughts will come in, but depending on what emotions it evokes, right, I'll just continue to focus on the breathing. That's what makes the difference.
Right. And not just that, the other important aspect is most people don't have the awareness that they have an agenda when they sit and do the breath. And so the agenda here is very specific. It's to witness the thoughts and how those thoughts make you suffer. And so it's not comfortable because you're putting your focus onto that. But what you're developing is a new mindset. And you're not even aware that that's what you're doing, but that's what you're doing. You're developing the ability to witness the programming, the conditioning, the thoughts that have been there forever that just repeat themselves like a broken record.
It also allows you to have a dialogue with yourself at that stage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And you will develop more of an inquiry with yourself as the more you do it. But anybody that suffers from an addictive behaviors will immediately recognize how crazy this mindset is. That's the mindset that leads you to drink, So it's not a comfortable thing. But imagine going to the gym, the first month it's like hard and you're just, you're trying to build your muscle mass. Well, this is the same thing. I call it, it's like your moment to build momentum for discomfort, which is the very thing an addictive behavior wants to do, is to avoid discomfort at all costs. So it's the opposite of it.
Excellent. So for those that, we're talking about the monkey mind, and we make a lot of jokes about, the monkey mind sometimes. But what is if you were to explain to somebody, your belief or what you've discovered about the monkey mind, how would you describe the monkey mind to someone who's never heard of it before?
Okay, cool. So one of the things that's really great that we're getting so much incredible feedback about the book, right? So Addicted to the Monkey Mind, subtitle is Change the Programming That Sabotaged Your Life. Is that we created these two characters, and we have Kevin and Elizabeth, and you follow them and they're suffering just like you. And they have all of these issues and these problems. And when they start to discover through the book is that the issue isn't what they thought it was. And so all the triggers, all the things that are happening, which they think seem so real to them, it's really my mother-in-law, it's my partner, it's my career, it's this issue, whatever. What they start discovering is it's actually their monkey mind. And what more specifically, what that means is that we have been programmed and conditioned to think the way we think. So let me give you some very simple example, which we illustrate in the book, which is, think of if you saw a video of yourself growing up, you would probably be in disbelief about how many times, let's say, your mother or father says, why didn't you do your homework? And it's just, why can't you be more like your brother? Why can't you just behave the way that you're supposed to behave? Okay. So what does that do? Think of it. When we're young, from 0 to 7, we're like a sponge. And so we just absorb information, right? And so we absorb this. We don't have the analytical capacity to say to ourselves, wait a minute, this doesn't sound right. This sounds judgmental. We don't go there. We just absorb it, right? So that becomes a predominant way of thinking, which is mainly shame-based and fear-based. And I often say to people, it's like the monkey mind. It's the equivalent of understanding that your body is doing the thinking for you. Okay, so what I mean by that is that you're already predisposed, your cells, okay? And this is why positive affirmation doesn't work, is because imagine, I like to give this analogy about the monkey mind. Imagine that your conditioning and programming is like a dog that's in a room, okay? And every day somebody's walking into the room and kicks the dog. So 20 years later, right? Somebody
Horrible,
walks in.
horrible example.
It sounds horrible, but anybody that's got an addiction can relate to it. Wait a second, it's just like I've been kicked psychologically all my life, you know?
Right. Uh-huh.
And so if you walk into the room and you say, oh, now I'm going to love on the dog, is the dog going to say, oh, everything's cool now, everything's fine, right? And so imagine it's the same when you try to introduce a new thought to yourself and say, hey, you know what, today I don't have, I'm a good person. Even though I've made mistakes, I've, messed up my life in so many ways. Today, I'm a good person. Well, your body's going, wait a second, for 20 years, you've been telling me that I don't add up. So I don't trust you. It's like your body's like the dog. It's freaking out, right? And so what we really need is to develop a relationship with the dog, right? So it's the same with our programming. We have to develop a relationship with this program way of thinking that I call the monkey mind. And we have to tame it. We have to learn to love it. We have to learn to understand what are those coping mechanisms and why are they there? And how can I just actually, with simple awareness, begin to change that mindset into a mindset that is more accurate and up to date, right? Because the programming is out of date, really.
Well, that is a beautiful way to describe it. And, a lot of times I will use that same example, the computer example, right? You've got the software that you got installed years ago is faulty, right? It's got malware, viruses, right? You've got to constantly be restarting the computer because it sticks, right? So at this point, it's almost like you're a blue screen, right? Yeah. And so we're going to have to just kind of wipe the hard drive and install new software. And this is where I understand it's more like I'm holding on to this emotional attachment behind the language. Like you say, like the affirmations part, there is a process that you have to go through before those affirmations become a part of who you are, because your current affirmations are, I'm an alcoholic, I'm a piece of shit,
Right, exactly.
I'm a bad employee. I'm a bad husband. I'm all these things based on the behavior that all came from these soothing elements that I was using to soothe myself from all the negativity, right? So how many layers deep do we have to go back before we can identify where the root cause is, and how do we begin to, resolve or make restitution to that wounding, you understand what I'm saying, right?
Absolutely. So here's the issue that I see is that most of us make this much more complicated than it is. If you go back to the dog example, it's not complicated. If you ask anybody and you say, what does the dog need? And they would say, well, he needs your love. Okay. Well, if you watch most people who are stuck in an addictive behavior, that's the first thing that they have the most aversion to, is to accept themselves. It's the very first thing that can actually make all the difference in the world. So in essence, when you introduce a new mindset, your body doesn't believe it. I always say to people, if you want to know what you believe, ask yourself how you feel, because your feelings telling you what you believe. Okay. And so how did you actually change that? Well, here's the problem. Einstein said it best. He said, you can't fix the mindset, a problem, from the same mindset that created it. Okay, so that's the issue. That's what most addictive behavior people, right? They're trying to fix the issue from the same mindset that produces the anxiety that leads you to use. And that will never work, right? Never works. And so here's the difference. Here's a new mindset. The new mindset says, I want to observe the mindset that leads me to drink. I just want to know what's going on. Like, what is happening, right? So let me give you a simple example. Like, so you have a partner, they're in a relationship, right? And it's the typical thing. The partner comes home and says, why didn't you take the dog to the vet? Or why didn't you do the dishes or whatever, okay? Right there, here comes the sort of fight or flight response, and they just start unloading, right? And saying, I work so hard, I work all day, da, 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 da. Okay, so here it is. There's the mindset, which is basically we don't realize that the mindset says, I'm being attacked here. My sense of self is being attacked, and I need to try to find a way to recoup my sense of self, which is not at all what is happening. It was a simple question, right? But it leads us back to our programming of the 100,000 times we heard, why didn't you do your homework? Why can't you be more like your brother? Whatever, that's what it triggers, okay? So if I go back to the breath, which is a very simple skill, if I started my day by going to the breath, in that moment that I'm about to react because my sense of self feels threatened, all I have to do is train myself to go to the breath, and instantly I have access to a new mindset. The mindset that says, what is going on here? So developing the ability to recognize, hey, I'm defending myself as if a tiger came out and trying to bite my head off. And is that really what's going on? No. My partner asked,
but it sure feels like it.
Exactly, right? And that's the mindset that leads us to the behavior, right? To drink, to excess, to use drugs, to have eating disorder, to be depressed,
If you guys are listening, there's the key right there. You go into a treatment center, they're focusing on the behavior. They're not focusing on what caused the behavior. So it's like, let's get you to meetings. Let's get you to work these steps. Let's get you to stop drinking. Are you crazy? That's the only thing that's been soothing me from this crazy person that I live with who attacks me every day. Right?
Yeah, it's like I remember there was one guy that after he's in the program for a while, and one of the things he started calling the monkey mind my inner roommate.
Yeah.
So it was just like, but it's really incredible once we begin to develop the capacity to notice that we don't see and we don't see and hear the people around us. We really don't. We are in relationship with our programming being triggered by the events in our lives and the people around us. And we think that if we go back to the stimulus and trying to rearrange the furniture in the living room, that somehow it's going to make you feel better, Well, it never will. And if you think that you can change your partner's behavior and that suddenly makes you more self-worthy, then you're fooling yourself again, So all these restrictive way of trying to control the behavior, they constantly backfire because they never address the real root cause of what produces all the anxiety in your body.
I love it.
And if you never deal with that, nothing will ever change.
Okay, good. Well, we're going to get back to see what I told you guys. We're going to be going off the rails on this interview because there's just too much. There's too much. From what I read so far, I haven't finished the book, but from what I've read so far, like I'm reading through the book going, yep, I get, yep, absolutely. Mm-hmm. If you can really get the message from that book, it'll change your life. Because the truth of the matter is that, like he was saying here, it's not that we hear them. We don't hear them. We feel them.
Yeah.
Right? What they say triggers an emotional response. That emotional response immediately evokes fight or flight.
Exactly. And here's the issue.
Simple.
It's so simple. And the issue, most of us have heard this, that 70% of communication is nonverbal.
Yes.
And there's a truth about this. So what that means is that what I believe, my body embodies what I believe. And so most people go external. So there's a whole section in the book called Tool of Awareness. And we talk about inside my skin, outside my skin. So the ability, it's again a very simple tool. But where is my focus going? As long as my focus is external and trying to manipulate outside circumstances and other people, it's a waste of time because I'm not addressing what's going on in my body and what my body believes. I'm literally trying to control outside circumstances that I have no control over, trying to make my body feel better. But my body's going, wait a second, you didn't resolve the fact that you think I'm a schmuck. The body's still under that pain. It's like, you're still thinking it.
Correct. And I love, because what that reminded me of, that example, the tools of awareness is really one of the tools we have for those of us in 12-step recovery, which is the serenity prayer, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Very
because
much
it's
so.
like when I'm trying to control everything outside of me, right? That's when the real unmanageability, the real overwhelm, the frustration, like all the real, those negative emotions increase, you know, to higher levels because I'm going
Yeah.
outwards. I need to be going inwards, you know?
Yeah.
And so,
Exactly.
all right. So real quick, because here,
Yep.
this whole idea of talking about the meditation and, you know, allowing yourself that opportunity to be the observer
Mhm.
is also a spiritual practice. So one of my questions is, you know, how do you maintain your spiritual condition? Do you have a spiritual practice?
Great question. So one of the things that I've developed over times is an understanding of what Einstein calls the unified field theory, which is basically an understanding. The other word for it for me that I call is essence. Okay. So have you ever seen people interact with a baby? You
Yeah.
know, everybody, doesn't matter who they are, they start going goo goo gaga. And what are they actually observing? Why are they so enamored with this baby? Okay. And it's because the baby is actually pure presence.
Mm.
Okay. And so imagine that if we were raised in a world of essence, which would mean that they would encourage us to be more present, to be more like connected to ourselves. But actuality, we're not raised in a world of essence, we're raised in a world of performance. So if you think of core qualities, a characteristic of essence, they're basically love, truth, courage, and what you believe. Those are all core characteristic of essence. Okay, and if you are raised in a world of performance, what starts happening is you abandon your sense of truth. So let me give you a simple example. Watch kids and the way they are emotionally. A 5-year-old goes from mad to glad to sad in 5 seconds flat. So they are, in essence, they are the highest spiritual being because they don't have any judgment over, oh, this feeling is a good one, that one is a bad one, and I shouldn't do this, and I should be like this and more like this. And so that hasn't formed yet. Okay.
Mm.
So their ability to stay in essence, to be connected with the present moment and having an experience, but the experience doesn't stick because there's no story behind it. There's no self-worth attached to it. It's just what is. Okay. So we are raised in a world of performance. And so therefore we actually learn to abandon our deep connection to essence, which
Ooh.
is what I believe is the highest form of our spirituality. And it's a deep connection of knowing our sense of worth, that it's not dependent on other people, it's not dependent on circumstances, and it's not dependent on performance.
That is powerful.
Yeah.
You guys might
And
have
it's
to. You guys might have to rewind that one. There was a lot in there. Don't be afraid to rewind a little. That was beautiful. But what really, that's what that at the core is our essence.
Yep.
And I say this
And
all.
our
Go ahead.
essence, it's like think of, does a plant does a plant have value? Like I often say to people, where does your sense of value come from? And it's, if you watch carefully, your monkey mind will tell you that the value comes from your performance, or whether people approve of you, or whether you're good enough to do your career, all these outside things. But in reality, is it really the truth? Is it? Are
No,
you your mistakes?
no.
If somebody makes a mistake and you were to go in a court of law and say, I drank, to excess last night, and that means I'm a bad person, would the jury convince you and say, yes, absolutely, we're going to put him away because he's a bad person? No, the jury would say, well, that was yesterday. What about today? And what's going on for you? And so there's no such thing as us being defined by our behavior. But this is the mistake that most, addictive personality does, is believe that, right? At the foundation, and talking about cutting you off from your essence. I mean, that's like, right? It's just the biggest thing that happens for most of us. We decide our self-worth based on our performance and others, and we keep crippling ourselves with anxiety with that and shame, and then we can't stand the amount of anxiety that's in our body, so we have to drink, use drugs, or have an eating disorder, whatever it is that we do, you know. So essence is about coming back to an inner truth that you are not your performance, right? It's like if you look at your real friends and the people that are close to you, they don't have an issue with all your shortcomings. It's like, yeah, okay, I have them too, so do you, you know? And it's like, but the love and the connection is based on something real, not something that is, you know, a performance can only last so long, right?
Correct.
And so if all my relationships are based on performance, I don't really have a connection to essence, really.
And think about all the pressure, because if that's what we measure, then I have to keep performing. I cannot just be, I cannot exist. I must be doing something. I must be performing. I'm a good husband, which means I have to be doing things. What does that mean to be a good husband, a good son, a good father, a good friend? So I'm attaching some sort of a performance-based criteria to my existence instead of I am love, I am kindness, you know,
Yeah.
I am peace, right? You know, those, you know, when I come from that, and it's kind of similar to like when somebody's a shithead and they're always making mistakes, right? Or they're getting into trouble once or they say stuff that they put their foot in their mouth. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden somebody says, yeah, but you know, he really means well. Mm-hmm. Because they can kind of connect. They, you know, you feel somebody, you know, when somebody is really at the core, they are not genuine and they're not loving. And then, you know, somebody who just speaks out of turn and, you know, has no filter and has, you know, very active monkey mind, mm-hmm. but their essence, you can feel them, right? Yeah. You see what I'm saying, right?
Yeah. And there's an understanding that comes over time, the more I get to know my programming, is that the truth is everybody's doing the best they know how, according to the beliefs they hold. Yes. So nobody is really vindictive, really. At the core, it's what's happening is they're reacting from their programming. So when I lose my temper, it's because my sense of self is being threatened. It isn't because I'm a mean person. It's because I'm trying to regain my sense of, you know, of myself, basically, right?
That makes so much sense.
If we begin to observe all of that, we become less judgmental of ourselves and others, right? It just happens, you know. One of the things that we do at the center that's really profound is we do something called experiential engagement therapy. And what it's based on is the understanding of modern, really truly modern therapy understands that the principle is called experience-dependent neuroplasticity. So what it means is that the way the brain, the neurons fire in the brain, has been created by repetitive experiences.
Yes.
So in order to create a different neural pathway, you have to revisit the fight or flight response, but with your adult self today, be able to create a different outcome. And when we do this with people, what we notice is they never, ever forget it. Because if you recreate an experience, let's say you had 1,000 times with your mom, let's say, okay? And this time, it's like there's a process in which the person goes through all the emotions, you know, the emotion of the child, of the teenager, and they just rebel against all this. And we allow all of this to take place. At some point, without fail, the adult self comes back on board and literally starts laughing and says, well, this is ridiculous. And then we go, well, what do you mean? And they go, well, you don't talk like that to a child. And those things they're not accurate, okay? And so, but we can't get to this state of consciousness until we address the anxiety that lives in the body, right? That is because that's the programming exists on the cellular level. So we have to go back in there and have a moment to be able to handle the discomfort long enough to be able to navigate it and then go, wait a second, let's check out the validity of this. you know?
Yes.
And most of us don't realize how simple that is. And it's much better than a positive affirmation, because you're actually going back to the original programming and you're massaging it and you're flipping it on its head and you're saying, hey, is this true? Is this true? And then your adult self says, well, no, that's not true. That's ridiculous. That's not how I measure, you know, the worth of somebody. It's not how you measure it, you know? And so when we do those experiential, you know, modules that people go through, it's amazing what starts happening. And so people can do that in their lives. That's why I was saying with the breath, for example, if you train yourself to go to the breath, when you get triggered with your partner or you're at work or somebody says something, now just take a minute and step away and start breathing, and know that all you have to remember is that your sense of self is being threatened. That's why you're triggered. And so now begin to massage that as your adult self. You're in the experience. You're in the experience-dependent place of that neurobiology, right? And so in that moment, you can start massaging it and say, what's going on? And then you can realize, boy, this sounds like my dad. You know,
Yes.
you know, you can go, wait a second,
Yes.
right? This sounds like my programming that I'm not enough, you know? And so as you're swimming in it, you verify the validity of it. And you say, wait a second, you know, my boss just said that, you know, what I just did there needed improvement in this and this and this and this. Does it really mean that I'm not enough? Is that really true, right? Or is just my work, is that needs improvement? Which one is it? Is it that I'm a schmuck, or is it that my work needs improvement, you know? And so, but most of us don't get there because we are been brainwashed, literally. Most, you know, people who are stuck in an addiction don't realize this, that our number one goal is to avoid discomfort at all costs.
Yes.
And inside the discomfort lies the answer to your problem. So you're avoiding the very thing that can set you free.
Amen, brother.
Right?
Amen. That is 100% true. You have to go through the discomfort to get to the other side. To find the comfort is only through the discomfort. Because
exactly.
once you start to challenge these thoughts, because really that's what you're doing. I'm triggered by something. That trigger is a thought. That thought may lead to another thought. And the breathing allows me to question and challenge the thought process. Almost like I say, put it on a jury stand, right?
Yep.
So cross-examine it, ask, you know, list all the thoughts out and ask yourself, is this true? Yep. Is this true? Was it true then? Well, I guess maybe it was. Is it true now? Well, it's definitely not true now. Okay, so let's go back. And then so you're just going to go back and forth, challenging the thought. And then, so what is it that you're really feeling right now? And so now all of a sudden you create a dialogue, an internal dialogue with yourself instead of reacting. Because so many times what you're talking about here is, because I immediately start to feel discomfort and I don't know how to challenge the thought, I immediately want to soothe it. Yes or no?
Exactly. You got it. You got it. And,
there it is.
And that's in a nutshell.
Yeah.
It's conditioned, right? It's conditioned in us to just go to that coping mechanism. Think of it, it's kind of like this, you know, if you have a young boy that grows up with a father that keeps saying, I'll give you something to cry about, just rub some dirt on it, you know, don't be, you know, you don't see your brother crying like this or whatever. So what does happen to that person? Over time, they learn to repress their sense of sadness. And anytime there's an emotion, they repress it, right? So now that man grows up and he can't understand why he's gone through 3 divorces. Well, he adopted a modality that took care of him when he was younger, which is, if you show emotion, you're going to get a lot of trouble with your dad. So you got to repress it, right? But then that very way of functioning is crippling his life, because if he can't show emotion, he's got no intimacy in his relationship, and therefore his relationship end up, you know, not working out. So this is exactly what programming in our monkey mind does, is that we haven't had a chance to look back and say, yes, that did work when I was a child. But what about today? What is it doing today? But we can never get to it because this programming exists in our body at a not so comfortable place. You know, I don't know, you know, Brené Brown did a decade of research, right, on this topic of shame and vulnerability and related to addiction. But the very thing that I was so excited when she finally said it, because for 20 years I've been verifying this principle, which is so simple. She said that people who are truly happy, okay, the people who are really, really happy, she calls them the wholehearted people, okay, she says have the highest capacity for discomfort. So they don't expect life and everything in the day to go all to be, you know, roses and, you know, everything is hunky-dory. They actually know that there's all kinds of experiences, just like the weather. It's going to rain, it's going to be stormy, it's going to be beautiful. It's like the essence piece they're connected with, right? As a child, you have a wide range of experiences, you honor them, you move through them, and you keep going, right? So as, you know, as we develop an addiction, we sort of buy into the concept that we're not strong enough, that we're not resilient, that we can't possibly handle this discomfort. Well, in reality, I say to people on a daily basis, say, well, gee, you've been handling getting shit-faced for how long, right? And how much pain has that created? And you want to tell me you're not resilient? That you can't handle a little bit of anxiety? I don't think so. You know?
Strong. That's a strong cross-examination.
Yeah.
So, real, you know, on that topic of addiction, which is, you know, a lot of what this practice and what it is that you teach allows people to do is get that relief from addiction once they are able to identify the root cause and allow the monkey mind to express itself and identify the thoughts and this and this and that. But what was it like for you? Because I you know, at the beginning of the interview, I also want to touch base on what happened to you, JF, growing up, because you know you didn't always have this practice, and to a certain degree, I'm assuming that it's life experiences that have allowed you to create this work, to identify this work, and to identify the healing effects of it. So tell us about how addiction, you know, played a role in your life, and ultimately what it cost you.
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm sure as a lot of listener can relate to, there's so many times where I ask myself, it's a miracle that I'm still alive. And mine started pretty rough. My dad was an alcoholic. My grandfather was an alcoholic. I mean, it just goes on. And it's, you know, these are people who were not just abusing alcohol, but also abusing, they were workaholics. They were very driven people, very successful people. And there was this performance base that, you know, I was just under all of that, right? And I remember, I think my first interaction with alcohol is I was 13 years old, and I poured a glass of vodka, you know, that was probably, I don't know, 15 ounces or something ridiculous. And I downed, you know, pour down my throat. And I'm surprised I didn't die from alcohol poisoning, you know. But then it was kind of like it just became this way of just really medicating myself, you know. And in my mid 20s, which I hadn't stopped, it was like it was starting to be so bad that you know, I couldn't function. You know, I had so many struggles with keeping up with work or different things I was doing. And there was a couple pivotal moments in my life where there was some people who came in and out of my life who did not judge me. And that was like probably, I would say, the most pivotal thing that I could say made the difference. And when I talk to people, I say, you know, this is our modality of the program, is we're truly a non-judgmental, you know, therapy model. And we're able to do that because we know that the behavior comes from distress and it comes from a program way of thinking. And so if we judge you, we're not going to be able to address the program way of thinking.
Yes.
And so that opened a doorway. And I would say to most people, find people in your life that can actually not judge you, but actually be more interested with you about, yeah, okay, so you drank again. Okay, so, okay, I get it. okay, but let's be friends and let's connect about what's so painful, or what's going on. And so that was really the pivotal moment of my life, is to have those few people who actually were there for me in this way. And then and mushroom into something radically different where, I did a really, really strong experiential workshop. One was with Robert Hargrove when I was, in my 20s. And I did so many different things like that started opening my mind and my understanding of what the real issue was. And slowly, with all of these mentors, with keeping going to these groups and these meetings, and it wasn't so much about the alcohol abuse, it was much more about addressing my distress, which then over time truly addressed my drinking problem. And I stopped. I was able to stop because I was actually learning to manage my anxiety. And so there wasn't a need so much, the urge to drink started to diminish because of the work I was doing. And I'm so honored today that I've been able to, for 20 years now of doing this work, but was able to create a modality now that does the same thing for people that I was able to get,
Which is exactly why I asked the question, because where did this come from? It came from the same way you were treated when you hit your rock bottom. You'd finally had enough, you needed help, and what you found was something that very few of us have even heard about. And so here is this process that's called experiential, how's it called again?
Therapy.
Experiential engagement. I've been sober for 15 years, right? And this is the first time I've even heard about this. How many places actually offer this modality?
Well, in the last 5 years, I started getting a lot of phone calls from therapists around the country because they would hear through either clients that have been to our program or other therapists about the modality. So I've been doing continuing education for therapists in this modality. So I have a whole certification process. So there are quite a few now that are starting to pop up that are using this modality more. I also do, seminars for, people who are in recovery who really, really want to, get this under control, but not so much through the fix-it mindset, but much more to the mindset that says, okay, I understand that there's a deeper issue here and it's my mindset and I have to learn how to shift that. And the book is becoming a tool. Most therapists are using and sharing the book with clients because it's such a strong foundation, right?
Yes.
It's like you're relating to those two characters. So it's not like a dry book that's just all, about, just dry skills. It's like you're learning to shift the mindset from what I call the monkey mind into an observing mind, but you're learning it through real life examples that people are going through. So yeah, it's an exciting time. I think that the therapy world is starting to awake to a whole new level. I think a lot of our modality has been restricted because if everything stays cognitive, it's very limited on what it can do. Like I often say the example, I said, imagine the proof's in the pudding in terms of how we learn, right? So imagine you're stuck on a desert island and there's a big wildfire and you have to get out of there. And there's two planes you can get on. And one plane is operated by a pilot who has passed all the tests, has done every single exam, all this stuff, and he's proven he's got a 100% score, but he's never flown a plane. And the other guy's never passed the test, but he's got 100 successful flight under his belt. Like, which airplane do you get on, right? And so,
B.
When I asked, yeah, exactly, right? It's you don't even have to think about it.
No.
So why is it that therapy falls short of that? Meaning that it's not enough just to understand my problem intellectually, okay? It's been known that when I hit the fight or flight response, my ability to be cognitively processing this goes out the window. So if I don't learn very, very specific skills to address the issue in my body, which is where the fight or flight response exists, and it's experiential, it cannot be intellectual, right? And so that's, I think, more and more coming to a deep, deep understanding in the world of therapy. And I believe it is the most advanced way to create change. We see it at the center all the time. We see people who have been doing cognitive behavioral therapy for years, and they still don't change their behaviors. And it's not that, cognitive behavioral therapy is bad. It's very good. It's very strong. It's just you have to have the experiential component adjunct to it. And the other part that's unfortunate is a lot of the meetings that we go to, or the 12-step or whatever it is that we do, they're super well intended, but again, we don't learn skills. We don't learn the very specific things that we need to do in order to not be caught in the fight or flight response every day.
Yes, because all of that really is what provokes, or the word would be, it provokes or evokes or whatever the case may be. But it's just language. I'm constantly being affected emotionally by language. Somebody says something to me and immediately evokes an emotional reaction. And that emotional reaction is going to send me into fight or flight, because I don't have the coping mechanisms necessary to go, wait a minute, hold on. Let me think about this for a moment. All right, so she just said that. Does she really mean that what I'm thinking is? And what am I even thinking, right? No, it's so fast and it's so painful because it comes from childhood that you want to just avoid it as quickly as possible. So there is that also, that emotional maturity, emotional intelligence associated with being able to pause and the buffer of getting into the breath. So here's what I want to do moving forward, because we could go off in all kinds of tangents. But more importantly is that a lot of my questions that I have for my interview are tailored around mindset. Okay. So I want to know about JF's mindset. Okay. So for example, in this idea of the mindset and what the thoughts provoke, as a coach, right, I get people all the time that have these limiting belief systems, right? I can't do this because, right? Or I will be happy once I achieve this, right? So they learn and pick up these patterns from role models in their lives, not realizing that they are now in charge of their own story. So what is the story that you used to tell yourself, your biggest limiting beliefs, and what is it that you believe now? Or how were you able to reframe it at the time?
Yeah, so one of the most powerful things, thank you for this question, because it really relates back to programming and the way I was conditioned to think, right? So it's not rocket science to figure this out, because if you were to ask anybody to write down the statements that they heard most often growing up, they could identify the thought pattern that creates this limited belief, okay? It's not more complicated than that. So, and sometimes it's more, it's communicated more energetically than it is necessarily through a thought, but there's still a message through it. So let me give you an example. I experienced my parents being in a constant state of anxiety growing up. Like, it was constant, it's just like, if they walked into the room, it was like, I didn't know at the time, right? But it's kind of like, and so what was the message through the anxiety was that if you're anxious, you are a responsible person. Ouch, right?
Yeah.
Ouch.
Wow.
So therefore I watch, so now if I'm able to identify whatever limited belief I have, I can see that it's always rooted underneath, right? There's a root cause of that limited belief. And what is it? It's some kind of belief like this that says, well, I keep being anxious about this because underneath I believe that makes me a responsible person.
Wow.
So as long as I believe that, I'm going to keep being anxious, right? Because that's the way I'm supposed to take care of things and to be able to handle things, is by being stressed out, So the same thing is the example I give earlier about I'm not going to show emotion because emotions are weak, right? So as long as I believe that, I don't share intimately with my partner. And how detrimental is that, right? So there were so many of those, usually I'd say to people, you have 3 to 5 core beliefs. They're not complicated and they repeat themselves, So that was one of them that was predominant for me. Another was a very, very strong performance base of, the way to be enough is to accomplish things, right? And I think that's very common for most people.
Yes.
It's like, and that creates the inability to sit in one place and be okay with my own thoughts and my own self, because I'm constantly driven to say, I need more, I need this thing to happen in order to feel like I'm enough, right? I need this accomplishment. I need the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And for years, that belief system was crippling for me, because I'm a visionary, I'm very innovative, but everything about my sense of peace and joy was based on that constant, carrot that was in front of me that I needed to achieve, And so what's different now is not so much that this monkey mind and this programming doesn't exist. Is what's different is that I have very strong skills of breath, of dialogue, like what you said earlier, that I know how to ignite in a fight or flight response, and that constantly shifts from the monkey mind to the observing mind. And so I would say that's really what's different now. And, most people, if they could just let go for a minute to try to think that they can fix themselves, that's just would be such a huge relief. And it's really the truth. And the problem is that they're rooted in a mindset that says, let's fix my problem. Let's change this. Okay. And that in itself sends a message to the body that says there's something wrong with you if you need fixing.
Yes.
And then I'm filled with, right? Then I'm filled with anxiety and I'm going to go drink because there's something wrong with me.
Yes. 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 So true. There's guys, rewind this. There's so much, there's just a lot in this, a lot of value. But at the core of it is, if you can get out of the monkey mind and get into the observer mind and try and kind of dissociate yourself from the event, what's happening to you in this moment, and kind of, if you could be the observer to see what's happening in your thought process instead of being in the fight, right? Because a lot of this is, if this, then that. If I'm anxious, that means I'm responsible. So I have these two belief systems that are in conflict with each other that create different sorts of emotions, right? And if we're able to detach those, instead of having the if this, then that, right? Yeah. And then it's like, okay, I've experienced anxiety. Okay. Yeah. Does it mean that I am being responsible? No.
And look at what you just did right now. Okay. And this is the thing that most of us don't understand, is you just created awareness. Yeah. And most of us we don't trust that that's enough to create change. And so we operate out of a shame base. We think that if I keep telling myself that, gosh, you were so stupid for getting drunk last night. Okay, so why does that pattern of thought keep coming back? Well, it's because the person believes that shame is the best way to motivate yourself to change.
Wow.
But let's start.
Wow.
Right, but let's start observing it. How many times have you woken up hungover telling yourself you're stupid? And has that worked so far? And most people, what I say to them is like, there's another mindset that kicks in that says, oh, wait a second, I just haven't done it long enough. I just need to do it for another 20 years,
What did you just, I want you to repeat this. You said shame. So, you're punishing yourself.
Shame, and we think we've been brainwashed and conditioned to think that that's what creates change. That's the real issue.
The best way to change. Shame is the best way to evoke change.
Yeah, because that's what the way we were treated as growing up. We were treated with shame over and over and over again, and so we end up programmed to think that way. And so we miss the subtlety that if I become aware of myself, change will happen naturally.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
It's totally the opposite, right? But it's too much to digest for most people.
even that's why I said rewind, because it's tough to digest, but at the same time, guys, it's so simple. This is such, the work that JF does, this book is designed to make sense. It's so simple. You just have to give yourself an opportunity to allow the process to give yourself permission to actually challenge the thoughts. Because a lot of times you'll just give up instead of just, give yourself 5 minutes, give yourself 10 minutes, right? How much time can I give myself to give this process a chance where I am consumed by an emotional state? Somebody says something to me and immediately I want to attack, protect myself, deflect, fight or flight.
Yep.
And when,
and I'll give you an
go ahead.
An example of this that illustrates it really well. So I give this analogy so that we can have a visual on this. So imagine that somebody walks in the kitchen and puts bread in the toaster, and the toast pop up and they're burnt. Okay. So imagine that's the relationship for a second. The toaster and the toast, okay, is the relationship with our programming. So the way most of us function, okay, so having the burnt toast is the equivalent of you getting drunk last night, okay? So instead of going to awareness, you go to shame. So here's how it looks. Who invented this toaster? This is ridiculous. I mean, this is just oh man, the kitchen stink and everything is so horrible right now, and you were such an idiot for putting the bread in the toaster to begin with. You knew it was going to be burnt. And it is burnt. And so you see where I'm heading? It sounds absolutely absurd, right? It sounds ridiculous. Well, in truth, that's what shame does to us, right? So what does create the change? It's as simple as you take a deep breath, you look at the toaster, and you realize the dial's on 6. And you go, oh, if I turn the dial to 4 and I try to put new pieces of bread in the toaster, probably I'll get the toast I want. So it is a truth. It's a universal truth that what truly creates change is our ability to observe, our ability to really see clearly the situation and what needs to be done for it to be different. But we never give ourselves a chance when we actually drink to excess or use drugs or whatever it is, relationship with food that we have, or we never give ourselves a chance to observe because we're too busy being in this mindset that wants to crucify us for it. It's epidemic in our society.
And I'm sure that's happened a bunch of times too. Even that toaster example in real life where somebody burns the toast and two people are having a fight about, you did this on purpose, right? You always burn the toast. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, exactly. And if you notice, the truth is so profound because, I can't believe how many times I look to somebody who's struggling with an addiction, and I'll look at them straight in the eyes and I'll say, when do you get a break? And they will start sobbing. And it's like, that's the truth, right? And that is the reason why you don't change, is because you don't get a break. You're constantly riding yourself with just such performance and this monkey mind that will not let you live your life. How crippling is that?
I love that question.
Yeah.
When are you going to give yourself a break?
Exactly. When?
When?
How much longer do you need to go?
Yeah. And I do this all the time too. How much longer do you need to suffer? Because this is, you're punishing yourself, and a lot of that performance-based thinking is perfectionism. It's not enough. It's never going to be enough. I have to constantly be one-upping. I have to constantly be doing better. I have to be constantly doing this, right? So when is it going to be enough? When are you going to give yourself a break? When are you going to allow yourself to actually take credit for your accomplishments? And that's when, I never even thought I could take credit for my accomplishments. I just thought I had to keep accomplishing.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa. whoa. And then all of a sudden I see what that whole, this sort of like either the sobbing starts or the shoulders come down or you see it in their eyes, right? It's just like this, like I actually have a choice. Like I could, wow, I never even thought, because they're not really accomplishments, because they're not right based on what. And so as you start to, the thing is, as a coach or as a therapist or as whatever, when you're in a conversation with someone, you give them an opportunity to challenge their own thoughts. Well, actually, you challenge their thoughts for them by asking these important questions. And when you ask them these questions that they have no ability to, they've never even thought to ask themselves, it immediately creates relief. It immediately creates a shift, right? And that's what's so powerful about language, because it literally can build or destroy.
Yeah. And it's not rocket science, and it's a lot more subtle than we make it up to be. So, what's complicated, I tell people this all the time, is that your monkey mind is complicated.
Yes.
But your observing mind is very simple.
Yes.
It observes that you're telling yourself you're stupid for drinking last night, and that's creating stress in your body. That's not complicated. That's like laser sharp,
Well, what's cool is I'll give you one quick example, then I want to go to the next question. But, a lot of times what I do is I'll allow someone to go into very graphic details about all the things that they can't do, and I can't set boundaries, and I don't know how to communicate with this person. I don't know how to do this. And they kind of explain the whole situation. And I say, great, I've got a perfect understanding of all this. Let me kind of repeat this back to you. Is this what you're telling me? Yes, this is okay, great. So if you were sitting with Sally's your best friend, and she was going through exactly the same things that you're going through in this very moment, what would you tell her? Oh, I would say she's got to just get out of this relationship right now. Oh, she's got to do this. And I'm like,
okay.
I go, wow. So that took under 5 seconds to come up with that answer. Meanwhile, we've been talking for 5 minutes. So what's the difference here? And they became the observer.
Yep, that's it.
Exactly.
Judging.
They took all the judgment. They took all the negative dialogue. They took every possible bit of language out of the equation and immediately connected with what would the observer do. And I love doing that, because it's one of the most powerful ways to do that paradigm shift, like in an instant. Like you just put the brakes on, and wow, I'm looking at things differently in an instant. So it's exactly what you're talking about here. It's connecting with that observer role. So I can get it. I can go down the rabbit trail, or go down the rabbit hole as far as I want to, right? But the question is, if you were going to give the same advice to somebody else, could you give them the advice? And most of the time, they know it right off the top of their heads.
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing is, remember that the mindset is been conditioned to steer me away from discomfort. Therefore, I'm not really, I tell people oftentimes, it's the equivalent of saying, you've got a problem with your car, somehow the engine or something's wrong with it, but you refuse to get close to it. And so the coping mechanism, right, is to walk around the car forever, right? That's what the monkey mind does. It's not really addressing the problem, right? But then suddenly when you introduce the friend says, well, yeah, sure, let me address the problem. Let me open the hood of your car, and this is what you need to do. It is that simple.
It's beautiful.
But they're stuck in the monkey mind that walks them around the car all day,
Yes. All right, so.
It can be so challenging.
Yeah, but
this constant, influx of thoughts that lead me astray over and over and over again. It is challenging.
It is. And I would also suggest people too, this is why your circle of influence is so important too. Because I'm able to read that book, and immediately I'm reading through it. Yep, got it. Absolutely agree. Yep, beautiful, written beautifully, right? But this is through years of identifying my monkey mind and allowing myself to be the observer and resonating with the information, right? This is going to be great. But again, the feedback that you're going to get from others is really what's going to help you. So if you're open to it, like Brene Brown says, this is how we grow. We allow ourselves to be vulnerable, and you say, this is what I was thinking. Does this make sense? And the other person is going to say, are you out of your mind? You know, and
Well,
then, you know.
That is the fear that we all have, right? So deep down, we all want to belong so badly. I often say to people, you know what's strange is imagine that for most people struggling with an addiction, okay, it's like this on an everyday basis. They say to themselves, okay, I'm not really part of the drinking tribe anymore. So I acknowledge I have a drinking problem or a drug problem, whatever, okay? So then you take him to a social event and somebody say, hey man, let me make you a margarita. And the person goes, no, thank you. And let's say the person keeps coming back and say, oh no, come on, don't be a party pooper. Let's da 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 da. And then it's just kind of this reserved, the head goes down, or it's like, very reserved, no, thank you, whatever. All right. So what's happening, okay, already is that they're not operating from a mindset that is healthy. They're still operating in this mindset that thinks that they are part of that drinking tribe. Does that make sense? And so I tell people, why is it that we don't put a stake in the ground when somebody comes up and say, what if my answer was, alcohol's hurt me, it's hurt my marriage, my family, and I don't drink anymore, but I'd love a lemonade, right? And so what is it? Why is it that people don't say that? It's the most vulnerable, honest thing to say. But I tell you what, that person will never offer you a drink ever again. So in that moment, you're putting a stake in the ground and you're saying, look, I know that alcohol and me don't mix anymore, okay? But the reason people don't do that is because they're terrified of being rejected. And I tell them, how come you're afraid of being rejected from a lifestyle that's killing you, right? Why won't you put a stake in the ground? And so that's really one of the main things to come to realize is that it's not alcohol that we're addicted to. We're addicted to our performance to others, believing that we have to belong no matter what, at the cost of I will kill myself with alcohol just so you love me. Dude. How ridiculous is that?
That is powerful.
Right?
That's exactly is so powerful.
That's like the core of it.
It is absolutely at the core of it. I have not put the stake in the ground and made a commitment either way.
Exactly. To myself and my beauty lies in my authenticity, you see. And if I dare anybody to try this on, and you will see this feeling in the pit of your stomach, you will start feeling anxiety. And here's the thing. It gives you an opportunity to create real relationship. Because here's what I've seen. You're either going to get a response that the person is a person that belongs to the drinking tribe, and they're going, oh, that person is just, I don't want to have anything to do with them because they don't drink like me, and I just want to be with my drinking buddies. But you have an opportunity for somebody that will say, wow, that's really amazing. My uncle has suffered with abusing alcohol for so long, and that's really amazing. And now you're opening up a conversation that's real, and the relationship is about to descend into a very authentic place. And now you're starting to feel really connected, which is what you wanted in the first place. But now you're developing a real connection, not some false sense of performance of like, I'm going to still pretend like I'm part of the drinking tribe.
Yes.
It's crippling.
And no, it's absolutely, it's beautifully said. Beautifully said. And that's the truth. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And if I can't commit to the idea that adopt the identity that I don't drink, I am sober now, right? So, and this is the consequences when I drink. This is the reasons why I don't drink. And I stand behind those. That confidence, that strength, that conviction, it's attractive.
It
People,
is.
people
It's
love strong, authentic people around them. And when you say, like, there's people that I've been around people that are like, hey, would you like a drink? Oh, no, thanks. I don't drink. Oh, come on, one drink. You can have one drink. I said, no, I don't drink. I'm an alcoholic. And the minute I say, no, I don't drink, I'm an alcoholic, there is no more powerful statement 99% of the time where somebody will go, oh, that's awesome, dude. That's
yeah.
wow, man, that's awesome. Well, how long have you not been drinking? I've been drinking for 15 years. Wow. My uncle's an alcoholic. Without fail, immediately the conversation shifts.
Mm-hmm.
But it's only when you when you draw that line in the sand, which brings me to the next question. I'm glad you said that, because I want to know when you did that. I want to know, because one of my favorite things huge Tony Robbins fan. So Tony Robbins talks about burning the boats, right? If you want to take the island, you have to burn the boats. So there's this moment in your life where not one more day, not one more second, not one more minute, I'm not tolerating this in my life anymore. You draw that line in the sand and you move forward. What was that moment for you?
So when I was 27, I remember waking up and I turned to my nightstand, and there was a pack of Marlboro. And not only was I drinking, but smoking and all of this. And I just, it was like really painful, right? It was one of those moments where I had developed enough self-acceptance that I wasn't using shame anymore. I wasn't waking up in the morning and saying, what's wrong with you? But I was still hungover, right? And I allowed myself to experience the pain in that moment. And I remember feeling a mixture of anger, of sadness, and of what you're describing, this sense of like, this is over. This is just, and I remember as a symbolism, I grabbed a pack of Marlboro and I crushed it in my hand. And there was a garbage can right next to the nightstand. And I literally just threw it in the garbage can and stared at it, for a good 5 minutes. And I was like, there was something in me that just now knew there was my stake in the ground. There it was, right? And so it is very important to realize that we are that powerful. And
Yes.
what I would invite people to think about is the stake in the ground comes with a lot of support. It comes with me and my dedication to be authentic and to nurture that ability to be real with others. Because without that, there are two things that feed addiction: is isolation and shame. And so if I don't learn to be authentic and be brave and tell the truth, I don't build a new tribe, and I see a lot of, organization out there that I absolutely love that they're out there because they're helping us connect with one another, right? And that's key. It's so, so key to being strong and being able to maintain your stake in the ground every day.
Wow. That is beautiful. What a powerful, powerful story. That's kind of was kind of hoping I would have gotten that one where you were telling your addiction story and what it cost you. And at some point, there is that pivotal moment for those of us that cross to the other side and you get through the discomfort. But first, there's that moment where you have to decide to burn the boats, right? Not one
Yep.
more minute,
Yep.
not one more second. And I have to change because
Yep.
I will no longer tolerate this in my life. So then with that being said, tell us about your aha moment, okay, in your life when you realized that now you were finally moving in the right direction.
Yeah. There was several of them. I think the most impactful one was I met my wife right shortly after that stake in the ground. And one of the things that I realized is that my relationships before that were all based in performance.
Mm.
And when I met my wife, she said to me, she was going through a divorce. And she said to me, if you think that you and I might get involved romantically, you're going to have to put the brakes on because I want to process, I don't want to just jump into a rebound relationship. And so for an entire year, we were best friends. And it was the most amazing experience because I realized that is what I wanted most, is that I have a partner in my life that was my best friend, and I didn't know how to get there. And so, but these realization of the truth is that we all feel the same way inside. And we tell ourselves that we're all alone feeling the way we feel. And it's such an illusion. Even people who don't have an addiction experience anxiety on a daily basis, experience judgmental thoughts, experience that they're not enough, experience that, you name it. You don't have to have, a drug problem or an addiction to suffer from all this. And that's why I call the book Addicted to the Monkey Mind, because that's the real issue. We're addicted to our own programming that keeps sabotaging our lives every day. So the aha moment is around awakening to that. And so for me, there's many moments, but the big one was with my wife and realizing that I was no longer going to tolerate inauthentic relationships based on performance. That was it. Based on looks and based on whatever. This was it. Another big aha moment was the realization that as I kept nurturing these authentic relationships, there was conflict that would come up, and that I had an aversion, right, to sort of like, oh, it's not supposed to be this way. And I remember even at some point in my life thinking that if I walk out of an argument, that meant that I wasn't committed. Well, later on, I found out that also means that you're committed to arguing. It's like,
good point.
Yeah. And so one of the big aha moment was to realize that having discomfort and having lots of emotion and everything is part of life.
Yes.
It's essential to our well-being. And I can learn to navigate it so my life gets better, right? So I'm not, I tell people there are two things that most people do with their emotion is they either discharge their emotion onto somebody else or they implode with it. And neither of those ways of being with your emotions are feeling your feelings. The ability to feel a feeling is the ability to feel it inside of you and recognize through your observing mind what programming is being triggered that creates this emotion. And as soon as you recognize it, you transcend the feeling and then it moves on, it moves through your body. And so feelings are the highest form of intelligence. So this aha moment is about realizing that we've been crushing our highest form of intelligence, which is the way we feel, because we keep perpetuating, imploding, or discharging discomfort, and we never really experience it and process it in a healthy way.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I love it. I mean, I was having aha moments while you were explaining your aha moments. Right? Because I love the way you express yourself, and it feels so genuine and so authentic. And I can just connect with your life, with who you are as a person, as a husband, right? As a human being, and just this heightened sense of empathy and compassion and love, which is right we've connected with our essence. I've stepped away from this idea that I have to be a certain way, I have to perform at a certain level, I have to achieve these things, that before I can be loved and accepted and appreciated, I have to do all of these things. I cannot just be, right? And stripped from that mindset, I become my truest, most authentic version of myself, which is love. Right? And that's where I come from. That's where your wife came from. What a beautiful thing that she gave to herself, and then she gave to you, and then ultimately to your marriage, because it was that awareness of, wow, look at this amazing woman that I have. This is what I want. And I want what she makes me feel like.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it, man. I feel that way about my wife. So I'm right there with you. All right. So tell us how our listeners, I'm sure right now they're like going bananas. No pun intended. So they're like, oh my God, I love what JF is dishing out. So what's the best way for them to reach you? Tell us a bit about, we know about your books. So tell us the books that you have, or if there's more books that you've written. I've just written I've just started reading the Monkey Mind. So how can they get a hold of you, and what resources do you offer?
Thank you for that. So the biggest thing I would recommend is to start with the book, because it's very powerful tool for you to learn to begin to shift the mindset. So the book is called Addicted to the Monkey Mind, subtitled Change the Programming That Sabotages Your Life. It is available on Amazon, on Kindle, so really easy access. You can just basically just look up the book. I would also encourage you to know that there are many organizations out there in the world, that are out there to help us, that are about learning how to shift the core programming that we're stuck into. So one of them is called the Mankind Project. I've been part of that organization for 22 years. You can look that up under mkp.org. I'm a leader. I lead these trainings internationally. They're amazing. The counter version for women is called Women Within. So I really recommend that. Those are not organizations that I would go into to become sober. I'm recommending that for people who have been sober for, I would say 3 to 6 months.
Love it.
As far as helping yourself being sober directly, our program is called The Exclusive Hawaii. So those 3 words spelled out, theexclusivehawaii.com. We have a beautiful program in Hawaii. I do extensive workshops, which you can have access to at the JF Benoist website. It's J as in John, F as in Frank, Benoist, BENOIST.com. And I do online courses. I have a Zoom video, basically webinar that I do. It's going to start in a couple months from now. And that's really, really exciting, because it's the best work is done live. So you can come and join our list on that website and have access to all of that. And the other thing is, keep doing what's working, right? So notice what you're doing in your life and think of it as more, keep adding to your tool belt, right? That's the process of recovery. It's just realizing that it's just not, for me, that was the other aha moment that I was going to mention, is how I discovered that I had to learn many skills. I had to diversify myself, not just think that there is one way and one thing that was going to do it, so it's very, very important.
Okay. So if someone was say, for example, someone was considering going into rehab, right? Yep. And then they listened to this podcast and said, I'd rather go to JF's. I'd rather go to Hawaii. So how long is the program? Is it 60 days, 30 days? I mean, how does that, is it customized? What's the cost?
Yeah, it's extremely customized. It's a 30-day program. We extend to 60 and 90 days. We are located on a big island of Hawaii. It's a 52-acre properties, ocean, 180-degree ocean view, 7,000 square foot private estate. It's very, very beautiful. But most importantly, even though it's in Hawaii and a lot of people think, I'm just going to go for a vacation, don't think that, because this program is really intense. It's not a walk in the park. And so you can reach us at, the phone number is on our website, but I'll say it here. It's 808-775-0200. Call us. We can have a relaxed conversation. If you need support that's beyond what you can do with us, because we do have a ratio of 34 staff to 7 to 8 clients at a time. So there's a huge cost of operation because of that. But we do accept insurance. So everybody that's got a out-of-network insurance can use that. We are licensed by the state of Hawaii and also CARF accredited. So it's a very, very well thought out program, and we really focus on skill-based. It's a skill-based program. So
I love what you have going on here. This is how I coach people. This is exactly how I coach people. So I want to get behind this, right? Because I feel I feel that this is where the real healing begins. at the root cause. And once I start to be able to, once I develop the tools to be able to diagnose and question and sit with and breathe through this discomfort, right, what we'll realize is it's 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes while I allow the process to work and ask the important questions of, is this true? Is this true? Was it true? Is it still true now? Right? And allow that to, once people learn how to get on board with that, it's the game changer. I no longer need to soothe myself because the root cause, I now know how to manage it. All right, so beautiful. So now we know how to get a hold of JF. All right, so real quick, I know you're not big on affirmations, you said that, that's why they don't work. However, once you're clear and once you have a positive mindset, I'm a big proponent of I am statements. So do you have some I ams? I usually ask people, what are the 3 most powerful I am statements? Do you have I am statements for yourself?
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, when I said about positive affirmation is the understanding, let's not superimpose a positive thought over, like there's a chapter in the book we call "Don't be fooled by good feelings, misled by good feelings," that you've developed over time to think that if you tell yourself something and you never really deal with what's underneath, right? Then it's your body never believes it.
Yeah.
But they're absolutely essential to our well-being. At some point, you got to replace the old programming with new programming, right? So one of the several of them that I have, my favorite one is that I ask myself oftentimes the question, who am I if I don't have a problem to solve? And so the mindset that comes out of that is that I'm present. I'm just here. Okay, so that's not more complicated than that. And I remind myself to breathe, right? So it's just like out of that statement, it's like I am. That's not more complicated than that. And it's like, so who am I if I don't have a problem to solve? Then it's like that rhetorical question brings me into the present moment. Oh yeah, remind myself to be here and now, right? So and this here and now can only happen though if I'm willing to be in discomfort. So that's another thing that I remind myself of is, oh, remember, it's perfectly fine that I am uncomfortable. So this might sound strange for people because they're looking for more like something to feel better. But the reality is, if I acknowledge, as soon as I acknowledge that I'm uncomfortable, I immediately feel better, right? So it's again, those are all statements of helping myself be aware of what is happening with me, in this moment.
Yes.
And another powerful statement that I really love to think about is how everything is unfolding perfectly. So then that doesn't put me at odds with what's happening. Many years ago, I did this amazing seminar, and one of the things that we discovered through it, we came up with the best response to absolutely everything that unfolds in our lives. And we figured out that the best response to everything would be, yes, thank you. So yes, I welcome what's happening because it is happening. And thank you is so much better than fighting with it, right?
Oh, man. Well, and that also goes back to I am present.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes,
Instead of,
thank you.
I'm not resisting.
Yep.
It's what is. I love it. And even this whole idea of embracing being in discomfort, because a lot of times, when you're uncomfortable, you're on the verge of a breakthrough. It means you're right around the corner. There is something going on. You're sensing some danger. You're sensing some discomfort. You've pushed through that, and on the other side is the answer.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if I look at it as, ooh, I'm uncomfortable, must mean that I'm on the verge of a breakthrough. Something amazing is about to happen, right? It takes some time to get there. I hear you, right? But it's true.
Well, the monkey mind will tell you like, no. You need to obsess about this, like this is not good. You need to run from it.
Right, right. Of course, of course. All right. So, what is your personal success formula or blueprint for success?
Well, there is a very simple wheel that we present to people, which is vulnerability. Um, First, it's self-acceptance, vulnerability, and changing your belief are the key to constantly coming back to those three principles. So if first I'm vulnerable and open, then I get a connection with the way I feel. If I get a connection to the way I feel, I create a direct connection to my thinking. And now I can change my thinking and come back to a healthy mindset. So it's vulnerability, feeling, belief, and constantly be part of this cycle, be engaged in that. That to me is the biggest, winning recipe that people can adopt is develop each of those each of those qualities in your life to be open to what's unfolding, to what we talked about, the discomfort, to then welcome the emotion and then identifying the belief that's creating that emotion. And now you're on your way to change the mindset.
Love it. Love it. Fantastic.
Yep.
What is the best advice you have ever received?
I would say that if you, well, a thought comes to mind. About 17 years ago, I was on my deathbed and I was curled up in a ball. I lost 45 pounds I'm not heavy and I'm only 160 pounds. And so I was like under 100 pounds or something or close to it. And I didn't know what was wrong with me. I was curled up in a ball and I was in such pain, and come to find out later on that I had celiac, and so I didn't know. But I went to see this chiropractor and I was laying on the table and he came and touched my foot and he said, "You're really, really sick." And I was like, whoa. And I started sobbing, on the table. I was just like, whoa, like, because I was under, a sheet and stuff, and you couldn't really see my body really. And then he said, he worked on my body. And at the end of the session, he looked at me in the eye and he says, "Please do yourself a favor." I said, "What's that?" And he says, "Please don't skip over this one." And I thought, what? What are you talking about? He said, most people, when they get sick, all they think about is getting rid of it. And it's like the whole mindset and the way we live our life is always just get rid of the bad experiences. And he said the opposite. He said, it's there to teach you. It's there to this is part of your life. And once you figure out what the teaching is in this, you will thrive at a much higher level. So don't skip over this. So this would be my number one thing I would say to people, especially when you struggle with an addiction. You got drunk last night and you wake up hungover, don't skip over this. Don't run from it.
Oh my God.
Right?
So wait a minute. So what was the learning?
Well, the learning is that inside the experience lies an incredible intelligence.
No. You're learning. He said, don't skip over this. Yeah. What did you? Yeah, I'm dying over here. You're like, oh my God. He just said, don't skip over this. There's something you have to learn from this. What was it that you were missing or you were avoiding, or what was the epiphany?
Well, thank you for that. So the epiphany was the realization that as I was subscribing to the fear, I was subscribing to a mindset that kept saying, I can't do anything about this. Okay. And this is what most of us, especially when it comes to our body and illness or whatever. My wife said another comment that blew me away when I was really sick on my bed, is she said, "Why are you creating this?" And I remember thinking, and I got up and I started laughing. And she asked me why I was laughing. And I said, well, whether I have power over it or not, it's not really what matters. Like I'm not interested in proving the truth, but how do I feel if I believe I have power over it or whether I don't? And in that moment, I realized that really taking ownership and saying, well, let's imagine that there's a reason I'm creating this and I want to know why. And so the epiphany comes when I'm willing to ask those hard questions, you know? And so inside of myself, I think that the bottom line is that we always have a good intention behind it. So for me, behind this disease of celiac is the intention of being really healthy.
Ooh.
Because look at me now, I can't eat crap.
Wow.
Right? If I eat crap, it's like my disease took care of it. It's like, that's it, you know? Well, think of it. If you have an addiction, it's the same thing, right? I mean, so yeah, those big wake-up calls are
Man, that was
right?
strong. All right. So what is one parting piece of wisdom you would like to share with our listeners?
Learn to be kind to yourself.
Mm.
You are not your behavior. Okay? I want to say this again. You are not your mistakes. No matter how much you messed up and you used again and again and again, that's not who you are. Learn to be kind to yourself long enough to find out why you behave that way. You're not bad. You're a beautiful human being. You're really smart, and you just have bad coping mechanism. That's it. You're not your behavior.
You are not your behavior. Man, stop punishing yourself. Take action.
Yeah, and start loving yourself. Be kind to yourself in the process of learning, you know.
Connect with your true essence.
Yep.
JF, this was amazing. I knew it was going to be, because when I started reading your book, I go, we are gonna dip and dive. I've been trying to keep my interviews to an hour. But this is too good. This is too good. And oh man, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Oh, it's been a pleasure, really. And thank you for the way you're so real with people and the way you share, you know, so much information that people can use on a daily basis. So thank you for that.
It's my pleasure, brother. Same to you. Same to you. All right, folks, we've now reached the end of our show. Thanks for joining us. And as we say here in Costa Rica, pura vida. Can you say pura vida, JF?
Pura vida. Did I say it right?
You said it perfect. I was about to say, well, you've been to Costa Rica before?